Tonight, Cyborg is the bridge between man and machine because no writer can come up with any other plots. Aquaman is the bridge between two worlds at great cost to his personal life because no writer can come up with any other plots. And the Flash must prove his father's innocence even though it seems like he committed a crime because you get the gist of it. It's gonna keep happening. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 203 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I do kind of want to keep this intro brief. We have 13 comics to get through and I wasn't exactly super short on any of them. It won't be that bad, I'm sure, but there is one thing I want to mention. One thing I need to bring up beforehand. For anybody who somehow miraculously only knows about this show and not all of the other things that we post on the Comics from the Multiverse YouTube channel, you may have missed, you may not have seen it, I ended up becoming a guest host on the Comics from the Multiverse show. So I explained it all in the episode itself, but episode 466, which I believe is currently titled the Bizarro episode, I kind of just got shanghaied into that at the last moment. I just kind of got pulled in and just like, oh, all right, guess I'm doing that now. So if you want to see me talk about modern day comics, things that came out not 10 years ago, but a week ago, go check that out. I have thoughts on the Absolute Universe and Nightwing. That's about it. So yeah, that's all there. Just wanted to put that out there for anyone who hasn't seen it. As for everything else, yeah, 13 comics this week. Not really a whole lot going on. I'll list them off here. We have, in no particular alphabetical order, Aquaman, Deathstroke, Flash, Gotham by Midnight, Grayson, Harley Quinn / Power Girl, Justice League 3001, Prez, Sinestro, Teen Titans, We Are Robin, and Wonder Woman. And you may notice I skipped over one, and that is we have a brand new number one. That's right, we have Cyborg, because he's too cool to be a part of all the other number ones when they launched last month. He had to have his own special week here, right at the end. I honestly don't know why it was delayed, but yeah, I'll probably be covering that one first in the show. Everything else, no major events going on, no major anything's happening there. Prez, that's going to be in the show. If you did not know my love for Prez, go back to the episode entitled Prez, watch issue 1, then come here and watch me gush some more, because I swear to God it's never going to stop. Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say, so I won't waste any of your more time. Let's go ahead and jump right on into comics. Cyborg number 1, written by David F. Walker, art by Ivan Reis. So this is, I guess, one that was supposed to come out maybe a little bit earlier because it's got one of the sneak peeks from Convergence in it, but hey, whatever. So starting with the sneak peek, we've got Shazam, Wonder Woman, Batman, and of course Cyborg, all facing down a horde of weird-looking, I want to call them Sasquatch-looking monsters, and they are apparently known as the Tech Breakers, T-E-K Breakers. And Cyborg's like, all right, well, what do you want? And they said that apparently he has stolen something, and he's like, I didn't steal anything, but they're like, all right, enough talk, let's fight. So portal opens up and some other weird ones come out and they just start fighting against him. Immediately Shazam is taken out and they're like, oh gosh, Shazam's a heavy hitter. This is going to be a problem. And they keep on going in. Batman says that they need to regroup, but as Cyborg blasts one of the Tech Breakers in the face, his helmet comes off and we see that it's kind of just like a teenager inside. And he's like, what? Why are there kids working for you? And he's like, you're a thief, Cyborg. And he's like, no, I'm not. Stop calling me that. And as he gets all worked up, one of them sneaks up behind and manages to chop Cyborg's arm off. And Batman is very like, oh my God, oh, Jesus, what's going on here? And they keep on calling him a thief. And he's just like, all right, I'm having enough of that. So he blasts him away with his sound cannon. And as he keeps on getting more and more damage, it looks like both his arms are lopped off. He says, do you know how long this is going to take to fix? And then from behind, sword through the chest, and he's like, oh god, you've really hurt me this time. It's like, no, Cyborg, we've killed you, and in doing so it will be the salvation of millions. And we get some little computer pop-up saying like, warning, system terminal, blah blah blah. And as the tech breakers go back into their portal, they go to leave, Shazam's like, hey man, it's gonna be cool, and Cyborg dies. He just doesn't have it in him. He straight up dies. However, some other operating system kicks in, he comes back to life, and then there's a huge electrical surge around him. A bunch of cables start flying out of his body, and it says regeneration in progress, and we end up the sneak peek with showing that Cyborg's arms have now fully regrown, and they're definitely tech underneath, but at least on the surface, they look to be normal human skin. So that's the sneak peek. Going into the issue, it actually just kind of follows up. We go with the tech breakers somewhere else in another galaxy as they are fighting against the Techno Sapiens, who, I don't know, they seem generically alien with a little bit of technology all like inside of them. And it's a whole big fight about to start between those. But we cut back to Star Labs in Detroit, and we basically just get the rundown of Cyborg, how we're in Star Labs, his father works there, his father is the one who saved him from death when Darkseid invaded, and then during Forever Evil, he did it again, except now this time when he died in the sneak peek, his dad wasn't there, and so now he needs to check in with his dad and say, hey, look at this crazy new tech stuff going on with my body. And, there's a whole overarching thing about how his dad doesn't really pay that much attention to him as a person, but more as like a project sort of thing. But as he's like, okay, I want you all to I recorded the fight between the tech breakers. Let's go ahead and pull that up. And there was like, all right, clearly this must be wrong readings. Something went haywire here. Like, this couldn't possibly be the case. And then as they see him literally coming back from the dead, they're like, this is incredible. We have to run more tests. This is all this other stuff. And then this woman steps in named Sarah, who I guess was a friend of Cyborg back when he was young. And she's like, how dare you? You all talk as if he's not even, he's a person. God damn it. And so she storms off all angry because she doesn't like how they're not treating him like a human being. And she's like, am I the only one who realizes that? So we cut back to the tech breakers versus the Techno Sapiens, and it's just a mess. It's like Transformers, like Michael Bay's Transformers. It's a mess of gray and metal. But it turns out that one of the tech breakers gets captured and the other ones have to leave him behind, and the Techno Sapiens, who all speak these different languages, only like one or two of which we can actually understand, they say, wait a minute, hold on. This guy's got a weapon that's something special. There's something familiar, but something special. And so they latch into his brain and start absorbing his technology. Cutting back over to Star Labs, we see that they're once again running tests and stuff on him. And as someone is trying to draw his blood, the needle's unable to go in, and they're like, hey, guys, you may want to check that out. But they're not paying him any attention. They're too lost in their own tests until finally he shouts. He gets angry, and when he does, he doesn't even realize that his arms have transformed into their weapons and their cannon forms and whatnot. And he's like, what? What's going on? And so his dad comes over. He's like, oh, we need to run even more tests, this time focusing on adrenaline and epinephrine and stuff like that. Let's get really into it. And as they're talking about it, trying to get all this stuff over, the nurse is like, hey, are you okay? And he's like, I really don't even know anymore, but thanks for asking. And so he walks out, goes down the hall, goes to talk to Sarah, and just like, what they were doing again, weren't you? Like, were they treating you like you weren't even there? And he's just like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't even know what I am anymore, and my dad's not making it any easier. And Sarah's like, look, I've been your friend since childhood. I've known you longer than anybody except for my family. I know who you are. I know who you are underneath all this cyborg stuff. So she basically says, maybe coming here was a mistake. Let's go ahead and hop out of here. And something I failed to mention was that at Star Labs, there's a protest going on. And it's just kind of one of those generic screw the big company that seems to be at the center of all these huge superhuman things. So as they step outside the building, Sarah's like, oh, maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe we can go out the back door. And he's like, nah, I'm part of the Justice League. This is nothing. So they go out the front, and there's this guy there who has an eye patch and a prosthetic arm, and he's like, "It's Cyborg, you don't know about the plight of the common man, like, check this out." And his hand is literally just like a claw. And he's like, "I can't even tie my shoes with this stuff. Like, look me in the eyes and tell me that, like, the tech in there is being used to help the common man and not just you crazy superhero stuff. Like, we don't see any of the fallout from that." And someone steps in and says, hey, this Cyborg isn't, like, the real problem here. And we see that this guy's name is Sebastian Cordona. He was apparently a rival football star back during the high school years where Vic played. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you guys played a great game." He's like, "Yeah, but you still absolutely wiped the floor with us." And so Sebastian says, "All right, well, let's go out. Let's get some coffee and talk this over. How's it been going?" And as they're walking away, the protesting guy's like, I thought we were protesting. Are we not doing that anymore?" So last little bit here as we cut back over to the Techno-Sapiens. It seems they have absorbed the sound cannon, the white noise cannon that he's got. And the leader of the Techno-Sapiens has it. He's like, "Yes, this is perfection. And now we are in the healing, but we cannot heal ourselves." And he just says a whole bunch of things about how the creator intended perfection, and we will find where this tech came from and we will make it ours. So the Techno-Sapiens are coming for Cyborg because it's a curse. So I in reading this, came up against the problem that every Cyborg writer faces, and that is, how do you make people care about Cyborg? I don't think they did a bad job. I personally, as someone who has been reading all of these books since the beginning of New 52, I don't think they needed to go through the origin story again, but maybe for the average reader who's like, "Oh, hey, Cyborg #1, I remember him from the Teen Titans show," maybe it's necessary. Maybe that's necessary to get people up to date. But I don't know. I hope that this book doesn't become as basic as Cyborg is the bridge between man and machine. Because, like, that story's done. We've done that. I don't want to see that again. I don't need to see that again. Give me something where it's more of an idea, something more of a concept that Cyborg can go up against, besides just this, am I man or am I machine? Right now, it does seem like we're going down that path. Obviously, the tech breakers have something to do with technology, as do the Techno-Sapiens, but we'll see where all that lines up. Art-wise, it's great. Ivan Reis looks fine. It does just feel like a prologue issue more than an actual issue itself, so I'm going to say this one is a flat 7, and we'll see if we can improve from there. Grayson #10, written by Tim Seeley and Tom King, art by Mikel Janin. So last issue we had the theft of this jewelry, this emerald or something like that. That's definitely kryptonite. And then somebody is hunting down people who have been around Grayson, and the immediate thought process was it's Agent 1, Tony. So yeah, it's ended up being this whole thing. So this issue picks up just afterwards, outside of the museum. Security guards are like, "Oh, this guy, he stole the emerald. What do you look like?" And all they can picture is the swirly Hypno's face, and they're like, "He had a tuxedo." But then Grayson just jumps in, kicks out the security guards, and says, like, "And a smile." So he ends up calling into Helena and just like, "Hey, you want to tell me why I had to punch out Agent 1? What that was all about?" And he's like, "Yeah, someone is murdering field agents, someone that follows up behind you and, like, uses similar stuff to you. I don't think it's you, but the only other person who would have that info is Agent 1. So believe me until something better comes along." And Grayson's like, I don't like all this double-crossing stuff. It's a bit too much for me, but, like, fair enough. And hopefully he can understand that. And we see Agent 1 coming in, too, with security guards all around, saying, like, "Grayson, you idiot." So he takes out all the security guards, no problem. And then he's just like, "You thought you could take me? You thought you could frame me for your stuff? I'm the Tiger King of Kandahar." So he goes off to do that stuff. However, As he makes his way back out to the main wing, we see that the Duchess, who originally had the jewel around her neck, is being told, like, oh, don't worry, Duchess, we'll get it. And she's like, if there were any real men here, it wouldn't be stolen to begin with. And she takes the security guard's gun and just shoots all the other guys there. And we see Tony sees this happen. So we go back to St. Hadrian's finishing school. One of the young girls is sitting outside her window smoking and sees Helena's helicopter come in. And basically she's asking for a report, and they say, yeah, all the people who were killed in a very similar way to how Grayson would have the strength to do so and would have the weapon know-how and whatnot. And also we looked into Agent One's nanite trackers, and he was never at any of the locations at the times it would have been necessary. But there are also blind spots in the nanite tracking, so he could have done it. It's not outside the realm of possibility. So that's Dr. Nets and Dr. Ashmore. Helena says, all right, leave me be. I'm going to go to my office now. And she goes in and she talks to the Spider, Spyder, which is, I don't know, precogs or something. It beats me. But regardless, they say like, we are reminded of the kleptoparasitic spiders who steal prey from other spiders' webs, and also the skull spider that endures in cannibalism, mainly against the kleptoparasitic spider. So, you know, it's a question of, are they someone who's stealing things, or is that just the plan within the plan? So we go to a temple of Debad, sure, and Agent One's calling into Helena saying, hey, Grayson's gone AWOL, permission to bring him in. She's like, nah, permission denied. That's not what's going on here. And he's like, what? And it's like, hey, look, I'm dealing with the Agent 37 stuff personally. Do not worry about that stuff right now. I'm going to do it. And he's just like, look, you're a little bit close to all that stuff with him, considering your history. I'm not doubting your ability to, but like, maybe that's not the best idea right now. And she's like, noted, stupid, but noted. If you are more inclined, though, I have a more important mission for you, which is Fist of Cain, yada, 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 doing stuff. Apparently it's the Vatican. They are planning on bombing from the catacombs underneath the church or whatever, and somehow that's still Spiral's business. So Agent One's like, fine, all right, I'm in. So we go to Corsica, which is the drop-off point for this jewel thing. We see Grayson's just sitting up at a cafe, and in comes a man who says like, you always did appreciate simpler things in life, much like your mentor. And Grayson's like, who knows my mentor? He looks up, it's Lex Luthor. And he's like, yeah, don't worry, I'm just on my vacation and whatnot. And he's like, wait a minute, hold on, you can see? And he's like, yeah, I see past your hypnos? Yes, it's actually LexCorp technology, and I'd be suing Otto Netz out of his ass if it weren't for the fact that he was already dead. But like, yeah, I know all about hypnos and whatnot. Also, I remember murdering you during Forever Evil. Remember how that was the thing, how that kicked all this off? And Grayson's like, yeah, Lex, the murder thing would be more threatening if you were actually threatening, like Kite Man or anything like that. So I'm going to bail because I got other stuff I need to do. And Grayson gets up to leave, and Lex is like, oh, well, actually, here's the thing. I'm the one who is your pickup. I'm picking up the jewel from you. And he's like, no, there's no way. He's like, yeah, no, I'm the go-between for Justice League and Argus, and anything that theoretically could be used against Superman, I have to be on top of. And clearly that kryptonite shard thing is something that I mean. And Grayson's just like, no, there's no way that Spiral would sell out to someone like you. And just like, oh, well, you never know. Maybe, just maybe, they knew that I invented the Hypnos tech, and they were looking for an upgrade. For instance, the ability to use the bodies of anyone who is wearing Hypnos. And Lex just like waves his hand around, and it causes Grayson's arm to just start fighting against him. He's not able to do anything. He's about to like attack this waitress nearby and or grab her ass. Hard to tell exactly which. And Lex is like, oh yeah, you tell me that Spiral would not sell their soul for that kind of power, whatever helps you sleep at night. And he basically says, and by the way, your mentor just disappeared. He's out in the cold with no one to guide you. And Grayson's like, okay, I've had enough. And so he takes some of the hot coffee, throws it at Lex, and throws down some money for the barista, and jumps off the edge of this cliffside cafe and lands on a cloaked ship. And as Lex is like, get out of the way, to all the people who are watching on, he yells out to Dick, I killed you once to save the world, don't think I'll do it again. And he presses a button on his watch. So as Grayson's flying away in the helicopter, he has a couple of drones following him, and he's like, all right, well, if you can see through the hypnos, let's see if your drones can do the same. And he causes the drones to be aimed at him, but with him in the middle of the two drones, and then he cloaks, dodges out of the way, and the drones end up shooting each other. So at that point, Helena calls over saying, Agent 37, did you make the drop successfully? And he turns off the comm, says, sorry, Helena, and he tells the Spiral Tech, hey, give me the last known location of Agent 1. I need to sort this out with him. So it tells him Rome, Italy, and we see Grayson, once he's turned off all the comm stuff, is saying, all right, Mr. Malone, this is Birdwatcher. I don't know why you're not answering, but if you're still out there, I need to know you're here. So we then see him continuing to narrate, just basically say, like, I don't know who's killing agents, blaming it on me, blah, blah, blah. As we watch Tony, as he's descending into the catacombs, he's exploring a little bit, and he comes across a bunch of dead bodies, seemingly all Fist of Cain, all people who were about to commit this big crime. And he says, I don't know what you would, or I do know what you would say if I asked you what to do, and you'd say, never leave your partner hanging. And we see Tony is being attacked by Grayson down in the catacombs. So, I mean, I'm not going to spoil too much, but the back of this trade kind of gives away exactly what's happening here. I like it. I do like it. It's not that it is a poorly written issue. I think it's written just fine. I don't know. Something about this just feels a little bit like padding to me. I guess I don't know. It feels like the Lex Luthor thing is meant to set up whatever the next arc is going to be. It's going to be setting up this more distrust of what Spiral is, maybe of Helena overall, and whether or not she can be the new director or anything like that. Maybe that's even this arc. I can't say it's not. But I don't know, all this duplicity and double-crossing stuff, I feel like it could have been explored as we were also moving the plot forward. Instead, it felt like the plot has come to a complete stall, and we're only just now going to, at like the last 2 pages, are we getting into the moving forward with anything else. So it's a little bit decompressed for me. It's not bad by any means. The art's still great. The writing for the individual characters is great. It just feels like we're not doing a lot in this specific issue. So I'm going to say this one is a 7.5, shy of the 8, but not bad by any means. Still a great issue. I guess, I don't know. I guess I just wanted a little bit more out of this, a little bit more forward momentum. And it's not that that's inherently a bad thing, but it's just not what I was looking for. Prez number 2, written by Mark Russell, art by Ben Caldwell. So last issue, Beth Ross, teenager who just went viral, was actually managed to get 1 electoral vote for Ohio, which caused the entire rest of the presidential election system to go into a tie. So now it has to be split up in the House of Representatives. And we see each of the representatives, 1 per state, are coming forward and putting forward their votes for president. However, there is a holdout where they are still voting for Beth in order to get some better deals from the other candidates, basically looking for a bribe. And we get this spelled out where I think it's Ohio is still holding out, and it's like, all right, give them NASA. It's not like Texas is using it. So we then cut to Beth Ross's college class, and she's learning about something about the Roman Empire, and the teacher is saying, why do you think the Roman Empire fell? And Beth says, because they were winning for too long. And she's like, well, explain. And it's like, well, whenever they were doing so well for so long that when something bad came along, they didn't know how to adapt. And other ones of her classmates are like taking pictures of her for Instagram or whatever, and she's not having any of it because they're just labeling her as corn dog girl. But the teacher's basically saying, like, yeah, when the nation was collapsing around them, everyone assumed everything would eventually go back to normal. It took them, the Empire being dead for 40 years, for them to realize that it was dead. So then we go into the hospital where obviously her father's being treated. Turns out he has the cat flu. And they say, okay, well, what about insurance? And she's like, well, he worked as an adjunct professor. And she's like, okay, so he's dead. We then go into the hospital room. We meet Carl, the end-of-life bear, who's a robot who offers people marijuana. And as he says no thanks, Carl just comes at him with a pillow. And Beth is like, what the hell? Turns out he's just fluffing it, just putting it under his head. And Beth is like, hey, by the way, I won the state of Ohio, so that's pretty neat. And he's like, cool, do you get to keep it? And she's like, look, I don't want to be a celebrity anymore. I'm sick of it. And the dad basically says, hey, look, I didn't do much with my life. Like, that's whatever, but I did have you, and that counts for something. And he goes on this thing about how the human mind absorbs more data every second than even the strongest supercomputers. And, like, you got to think about how unique that is in the world. The most precious thing in the universe is that, like, we have that ability to experience things. And he asks Carl for some banana pudding, and he's like, if humanity only existed in this universe to make banana pudding, I think that's okay. And he peacefully passes away with Beth right there next to him. So we then cut to a senator in Pennsylvania talking to the one in Ohio, and they're talking like teenage girls. Pennsylvania one's like, what's up, skank, as he answers the call. And as such, because they're starting to talk to each other about how Ohio got offered NASA, now the Pennsylvania one is saying that we want more too. The one who lost NASA is now able to be warmed up on. We see that there is a global warming village, which is basically a bunch of creatures, including people that would have been displaced by global warming, have now been put into a zoo. So it's like, oh, look, here's the Samoan section of the zoo. And so he's being offered a football stadium and 2 NASAs, and then he gets on the phone and just kicking his feet like, oh my God, you won't believe it, guys. So it comes to the second ballot, and it's even more spread apart than it was before. More people are putting their votes into Beth because they're holding out for better deals. They want more from the president. So as I'm blinking on his name, but like the big guy, Jay, he's walking away. One of the presidential candidates is like, oh yeah, I got a fun run later on. Someone with like cancer kids or whatever. And Jay's just like, you're not campaigning anymore. Stop trying to win people over. Everyone you need to win is in this room. And we see the Texas senator is currently being chained up and whipped by the majority whip. So that's happening. Back over with Beth. She's been visited in her home by some missionaries, and as she serves them lemonade, she accidentally sneezes on it. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me get you more. But then the missionaries are like, oh no, we're actually part of the Church of Vironetics, or the Church of Wormology it's called, where they worship the virus because God gave up on humanity. God cast us aside, and its new favorite thing is viruses and bacteria, and humans are nothing but a breeding ground for those. So they really, really like the fact that the cat flu exists. And Beth is like, you have awful timing. Get out of my house. So we see a couple more senators. Like, there's panda wrestling. There's a hot air balloon trip. There's Colorado wants a naval base despite the fact that it's landlocked. And then one of the other senators hears that and is like, oh, I want a naval base. So more and more, they're just begging for more stuff. And we see a meeting between Jay and all of his other things as they're getting taco drones. And they're like, look, we ran the stuff. We've made all these deals, all these bargains. We've got the projections. This is how it's going to look when all is said and done. We're going to win the election. It's not going to be a problem. So it comes to the third ballot. And some people are voting for the actual 2 candidates, but more and more people are holding out for Ross, and they're literally just like looking up to the balcony saying like, I'm going to get myself a shark aquarium. However, it comes to the point where Beth has 25 votes, and if she gets 26, she wins. And the guy stands up and is like, he's got 25. Stop what you're doing. We'll give you anything you want. Just don't vote for her again. And it gets to Delaware, and Delaware's like, yeah, we vote for Beth Ross. And the entire place breaks into pandemonium. Don't know why that was hard to say. So they start like throwing stuff. She's like, misvote. I want to take it back. It's like, nope, all votes are final. And Jay's like, oh, dear God, I think I'm having a heart attack. So we cut over to Beth. She's at her father's grave when all of a sudden a helicopter comes down. Old man The oldish man steps out, offers his hands like, you better come with me. And she's like, what? Who are you? Get away from me. But then a bunch of reporters and cameras start swarming from all areas like a zombie movie. And she has no choice but to grab hold of this guy's hand and fly off. We cut over to Jay, who is being talked down by the other lobbyists, just like, hey, don't worry about it. She's 19 years old. Like, she's not going to be a threat. And he's like, you don't get it. The one candidate we could manipulate because all he wanted was to be loved. The other one we can manipulate because he owes us so many favors. But this is a president who owes nobody any favors and doesn't fear humiliation. She's capable of anything. So we then go back to Beth, who is talking with the guy who saved her. His name is Preston Rickard. And for anyone who doesn't know DC history, there was a 70s series called Prez, which Preston Rickard was the Prez of that series. But in this, he was a guy who almost became president many years prior. And he's willing to step in as kind of a guide here and say, like, look, you need to know what you're going to go through here. We're at war with half the world. The other half is gobbling up all the water and oil that's left. Our entire planet's about to go off a cliffside. And America, while still the most powerful, is too locked up in its own internal stuff. And if we're waiting for them to finish their games, we're all going to be dead by the end. So this has to come down to you. And he offers her up a bulletproof hoodie. And is like, you're going to need to wear this. And also, you're going to need a vice president. And she's like, and I should pick you because why? And he's like, look, you may be the most hated president in history, but the only way that you're not going to get yourself killed is if you have a vice president who is hated even more. And that's the issue. I set down this issue after I was done reading it. And I looked at my fiance and I said to her, I hate that DC canceled this book. Every page is dripping with social commentary, and it's so timeless, and it's so of the now as well. Oh, God. We need this book more than ever. DC, get off your ass, give me more Prez. Mark Russell specifically. I don't care what you need to pay him. You do it. Oh, boy. No, I love this book. I'm never going to stop loving this book. There's nothing you could do to convince me to not like Carl, the End of Life Bear. Even just him, like just the panel where it's like, all right, well, here comes the pillow. Like, I just got a kick out of that. Nah. 9. Maybe 9.5. I'm going to stick with a 9 for this one, but it's so good. It's so good. The Flash number 42, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So last issue, we got a whole thing where Henry Allen broke out of jail, something because of Thawne. It's whatever. This issue picks up with his cell. The police are investigating and trying to see evidence of what went on here. Barry shows up like, hey, wait, where's my dad? This is his cell. What's going on? And Daryl's there saying, now, son, you got to calm down. This is a police case. You shouldn't be involved here. And Director Singh's there like, hey, Barry, we watched the surveillance tapes, man. Your dad was the orchestrator here. Your dad caused all this to happen. He's like, what? No. He was taken hostage or kidnapped. He's not a criminal. I have evidence. Have I ever told you about my evidence? My dad's not a criminal. They're like, yes, Barry, we know. Look, can you leave? You're too involved here. And as they're shoving him out the door, he goes super speed, looks for evidence around the place. Can't find any. As he goes down the hall, he overhears the security guard who was basically forced out at gunpoint. His name's Elijah, and they're just saying, look, Elijah, go home. You've had a long day. Go take care of your wife. That's more important right now. And as he's eavesdropping, in comes Iris, who's like, what are you doing eavesdropping? That's my job. I'm the reporter here. And Barry's like, my dad, he was taken. He was kidnapped. It was definitely kidnapping or a hostage thing. And she's like, right, totally. I believe you, Barry. But honestly, I'm not here for that part of the story. I'm on the Flash beat. And she's like, what the hell's the Flash beat? And she's like, oh, wherever the Flash goes, there's always a news story. He's like a magnet for trouble. So I just write about whatever the Flash is involved in. But that's not to say that your dad's thing isn't important, his escape and or kidnapping. And Flash is like, no, I get it. But do you really think Flash is just a magnet for trouble? And it's like, well, yeah, wherever Flash shows up, you got to watch out for the wake that comes in behind him. And they talk briefly about Patty and after the breakup and all that, how she was a source for Iris, and about Wally and how he's actually doing schoolwork and stuff like that. it doesn't really go anywhere. But we then cut over to Henry Allen in a medical supply company along with Girder and all the other inmates that he broke out with. And the other inmates are like, what are we doing here, man? We should be in Canada. Why are we stopping for medical supplies? And Henry says, I made a deal. You heard me make the deal. We're doing this. So you guys keep lookout and I'll get all the supplies we need. And out the corner of his eyes, he sees something yellow and he's like, what the hell was that? And we see it's Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash just goes over to the fire alarm and pulls it. As it's ringing, in busts a security guard, gun drawn. He's like, stop right there. And it's clear he's nervous. He doesn't want to do this. And Henry's like, hey, man, don't worry about it. We're not here to hurt anybody. But as he's saying hurt anybody, time slows down. We see Reverse Flash coming. And he's like, oh, Henry, you were always such a pacifist. If you had stayed with me, I could have brought you to new heights. But now, look at you. You're a murderer. And he puts the gun out of Henry's pocket into his hand, pulls the trigger, security guard is dead. And Girder's like, damn, man, you just killed a guy. I just watched you kill a guy. And Henry's like, no, I did. Oh, God. All right, everyone grab what you can and meet up at the rendezvous point later. Jesus. So they all run off, and we see Reverse Flash watching on saying, like, see you soon, Henry. So we cut over to the wrong side of the tracks where a little old lady is trying to get into her home. And as she enters, inside, standing in the darkness, is Girder. And she screams out, and it goes, oh, Anthony, you scared the living bejesus out of me. What are you doing sitting in here with the lights off? Turns out this is Girder's grandmother, and she's totally cool with Girder being a criminal. She's just like, oh, yeah, what are you doing here? I thought parole was in like 100 years. And he's like, yeah, I'm not exactly here on the up and up, and I didn't turn on the lights because I didn't want to waste your electricity. He's like, oh, you're always so thoughtful, not like your father, that bum. So she offers him some snickerdoodles, and in doing so, Flash shows up in the doorway being like, damn, Girder, these must be some good cookies if it's Willem breaking out of jail. And little old Granny's like, get off my property, you're trespassing, I could shoot you right now. And Flash is like, wait, hold up, what? What is going on here? And Girder says, don't worry about it, Grandma, he's mine. And we start a fight scene. It's pretty involved. It involves her laundry line and her unmentionables. And eventually, Girder gets tied up by Barry, and Barry says, hey, why did you abduct Henry Allen? And he says, what do you mean abduct? That dude is cold-blooded. I watched him kill a guy. He straight up murdered that dude. And Barry's like, no, he didn't. Shut up. Why would I trust a criminal? So they continue fighting, somehow making it into a junkyard. Girder taunts him, says, like, you can punch me a million times, Flash. All I need to do is land one hit on you. And Flash is like, fair enough. Come and get me. And he lures him over underneath a strong electromagnet, sucks Girder right up onto it. And he's like, yeah, that was way too easy. Anyway, Girder, tell me about Henry Allen. He's like, I'm not a snitch. And he's like, all right, why did you need the medical supplies? And he's like, gonna have to ask Henry Allen. So we cut over to the suburbs of Central City, and we meet up with Elijah, that security guard again. And he's talking to his wife, who's got cancer. She's bedridden. She's very sick. And he's like, hey, honey, I had a little incident at work, but don't worry about it. Everything's fine. It's cool. It's cool. I'm going to go make you some breakfast. And he goes outside, and he starts crying. And Barry's just sitting there on his couch like, hey, man, I looked up your history and your wife's stuff, and I'm starting to piece together an image here. Can you tell me what really happened last night? And Elijah just breaks down and says, like, look, when your dad got there, he mentioned that he was like a great doctor, a fantastic one. I didn't believe him. Criminals always lie. But then I looked him up and like, yeah, he's a really good doctor. And so he would ask about my wife and like how she's doing as she got sicker and sicker. And he would offer up some suggestions, but we just don't have that kind of money. And then all of a sudden, recently, Henry was like, I got to get out of here. I'll do anything. I know how to make a cure for your wife. I can cure her. And I needed to at least take that chance. So yeah, I let him out. I worked with him on that. And he basically just holds out his hand and says like, take me away, Flash. I know I'm guilty. And Flash is like, look, just, if Henry shows up, let me know. I'll come deal with it. But for now, just take care of your wife. So he's run away. He's upset, obviously. And as he's running, in comes Reverse Flash, and he's just like, hey! And Barry's like, what is going on? Who are you? And Reverse Flash is just running in front of Barry backwards, and he's like, man, you sure are angry. You must have a lot of unresolved trauma. I wonder what that's from. And he's like, you don't know me. Shut up. And Barry goes to throw a punch, and Reverse Flash just freezes time, walks around him, but somehow transports / teleports them to outside of Barry's childhood home, the home where his mother died, and that's where the issue ends. I like it. I like the writing of it a lot. I think that it's keeping up this mystery in a very intriguing way. Obviously, Reverse Flash is very mysterious and what his place is in all this. The relationship between him and Henry Allen, that's obviously something big to deal with that I honestly know nothing about in terms of like actual history. And then on top of that, I like how it's setting this thing up where Barry is going to have to slowly accept that his dad is a criminal, but it just so happens in this specific case, he isn't. Like, he's still doing the right thing here. So, I don't know. There's a lot going for it. My main critique is the Brett Booth art. I'm still not a fan of that. And the current costume for the Flash with the golden eyes, not working. They got to be white. I don't know why anyone would think golden eyes would work there, but yeah, no, definitely not. So, it's mostly good on the writing, mostly bad on the art. I think it's still going to even out to be like a 7.5 for me. With great art, it could have been like an 8.5, but it's dragging it down a bit into the 7s. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we go, even if it's just going to consistently be Brett Booth art pretty much the whole time. But, you know, pick your battles. Gotham by Midnight, number 7, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Juan Ferreyra. So, last issue was kind of just its own little self-contained thing, but it did end with the fact of a new woman coming in named Kate, who basically is going to have more information on the internal affairs investigation that is going on against Precinct 13. So, we open up this issue with a flashback to Weaver's backstory. How 30 years ago, he had a nice little suburban home. He was like 10 years old. He went inside his home one day and found that his dad had just shot himself in the head. And he was laying there on the kitchen floor, and Weaver just walked in on that. And as he's doing so, Kate's talking to him, saying like, hey, look, I remember you always had big plans and stuff like that, but you just don't care enough. You always just check out. And Weaver snaps to, he's like, what? Sorry, I was somewhere else. What's up? And Kate says like, look, you should have called me 3 months ago as like your legal stuff, but someone is gunning to shut you down. Something is going on there. And Weaver explains how Gordon used to shield them. It never needed to be a thing before. And they're like, yeah, well, Gordon's not here. And before they can continue the conversation, I think it's Drake comes in and is like, hey, we've got a call, like we're going to need some help with something for us. So we go down to this neighborhood where normal cops have checked this out. They deemed it too weird and they passed off to Precinct 13. Turns out that these people in 2 neighboring homes both ended up dead in the exact same way, where it looks like they just gently lied down on the ground and died. And so as it gets passed off there, we have Dr. Tar investigating it all with these weird goggles of his, and they point out how there's black flowers on the front planter, and just like, yeah, it's probably something to do. But as he uses these goggles, he's able to see this weird, he calls it an aura that is permeating inside this person, but it is foreign to them, and it is extending down into the floor. And as they investigate further, they see like there was toast made, but it was laid gently on the table. It wasn't just dropped onto the floor. And this woman set down her lipstick as she was like midway through applying it. So this isn't something that was just all of a sudden it overtook them. It was slow, and they laid down on the floor seemingly of their own volition. But again, Tar points out, yeah, it goes down through the floor. I really want to check out the basement. And Drake is like, yeah, well, we'll get there, but I called Corrigan for backup because if this is something bad, we're going to want him to be here. And they ask where he is, and we cut over to Sister Justine's apartment, her home, and we see he's looking around. She's got a whole bookshelf. He pulls one off and reads a quote out of it, and as he's looking around, he comes across oatmeal raisin cereal, and he's like, oh, Jesus. And he's like, oh, sorry, I probably shouldn't be saying that in here. You wouldn't like me taking the Lord's name in vain, but like, I don't know how to deal with this. And he just sits down on the bed and just like, I don't want to pretend that like if it were not for me, you would still be alive. I don't know how that would work. I'm not supposed to regret anything. I'm an agent of heaven, but like, oh God. And he just kind of breaks down on the bed for a minute. Like he knows what happened because of him. So we go back to Kate and Lieutenant Weaver as they're talking, and Kate's just basically like, look, what happened to you? You're not the same guy that I used to know. Like, you would have been on the front lines ready to fight back against whatever this is, but now you're like barely paying attention to what's going on. You're lost in your own world, man. And he basically points out that, like, look, you want to know what Precinct 13 does? We fight against monsters. Like, actual honest-to-God monsters. Then go bump in the night. The reason we don't have any arrests is because these things aren't human. Like, they don't make sense, and they can destroy the entire city. And we have a flashback to 2 years ago, where Weaver's sitting down with Gordon, and he's just like, hey, so what's going on, Sam? I've noticed a shift in your personality. You're falling through the cracks. What's going on? And he's like, I saw that thing that killed my partners. I was out on the field. I saw them die, and no one believed me. No one believed that it was a monster. And Gordon's like, look, I believe you. I understand there are some crazy things in this city you would not believe, but you can't exactly go putting that in a police report. I know it's full of lies. I understand that. And I don't think you're nuts, okay? But how about this? I'm going to move you to a different division. I'm moving you to Precinct 13. So that's how Weaver got involved in all this. And we see Drake is looking out the window, trying to figure out where Corrigan is. He's running late. And as they're sitting there waiting, he's just like, all right, screw it. Let's go down to the basement. But Tar is sat down on the floor, and he's like, just a minute. I'm feeling tired. I just need to lay down for a minute. And the moment he lays down, you see the aura starting to grow inside of him. And Drake runs over, pulls him up, gets him off the floor, starts ripping this strange tentacled leech-like thing out of his arm, and it just jumps out, and Tara's like, oh, I could feel it biting me, but like, I didn't care. And she's like, yeah, that's great. Hey, could I have some help? And so it gets thrown down on the ground, and Corrigan steps on it, and he's like, oh geez, I'm thinking sushi for some reason. But as they stare at him, all of a sudden he starts bubbling with Spectre energy, and he's like, okay, sorry I'm late, but this thing is demon spawn. This thing is a motivational vampire right in the middle of the city. You're going to have to evacuate the street because, like it or not, Spectre's dealing with this one. So they run out of the building, tell the cops, evacuate the area now. Huge explosion of divine energy. And Drake looks back like, how are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to know it was a demon? So we cut over to Blackgate Prison, where 2 internal affairs officers are meeting with a prisoner who says that he's got something to say. And they're like, this is a bit convenient. We open up the case, and this guy says, oh, I have something against Precinct 13. Turns out he's been trying to say something for years, but no one's ever actually listened to him. So this guy walks in. His name is Fred Anderson. And apparently he was there on the night where Drake, acting as a narc, was kind of recruited by Corrigan. And when she ended up gunning down a bunch of guys, and Corrigan said, hey, I'll help you cover this up. And it's just like, yeah, he did it, or she did it, and then a police officer went to cover it up, and they're all in Precinct 13 now. And Fred's giddily selling all this, saying that, you know, he wants a little bit of a quid pro quo for that. So we go over to Spectre. He's in full Spectre form. He's wrestling this tentacle demon out of the floorboards. We see that not only the single building lighting up with energy, but the entire block, the whole street is lighting up, and they're like, oh man, this is affecting a lot of people. And as Spectre zaps the thing with divine cosmic energy, there's a big explosion, not actually damaging anything, but just causing some smoke to come out of the windows. And Corrigan steps out, and he's like, all right, it's done. I counted, there were like 55 victims, some of them dead for a week, some of them a lot longer. It's just, start checking doors, man. So they said, we cut over to Weaver, who's now in his apartment. Sorry, not his apartment, in an office with Kate. And Kate's just like, hey, hold on, I'm getting a call. And she takes the call as Weaver's like, hey, did I ever tell you what happened to me as a kid? And she's like, yeah, okay, thanks. Hangs up the phone, says, hey, they have a witness, like, that says he saw some really messed up stuff, and they're going to file criminal charges instead of just the normal internal affairs stuff. So whatever this is, somebody with power is looking to shut you down. Like, the fact all this is falling into place at once, that's not coincidence. So if this is going to trial, you're going to need to defend yourself and all of your people, or else you're all screwed. And if you really do as much as it is you say you do for this city, all of Gotham is screwed if you guys are screwed. So that's the issue. I like it. I think it's a well-written, like, if this book ends up just kind of being a connection of one-shots with this loosely overarching story of, you know, there's demons in general, and like, what is the interpersonal stuff going on within the precinct and the GCPD and stuff like that, I'm down for that. Like, that strikes me as season 1 of all of those, like, procedural, like Supernatural, Smallville, like all that stuff where monster of the week, but then there is a overarching narrative that you can pay attention to. And the reason they do it is because it works. It works. As long as you go into it with a plan, it's genuinely a good way to get people into it. So I'm down for this. I enjoy the art. I enjoy the writing. I like the characters. There's really nothing bad about it. I'm going to give it an 8. It's just shy of the 8.5 for me, but I something about it seems wrong to give this one an 8.5. Probably because it hasn't, like, we had that really epic scale issue a while back. It doesn't feel up to that point, but it's still very good. Deathstroke number 8, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonny, art by just Tony S. Daniels. So last issue, Deathstroke broke into a cave on Paradise Island, destroyed a big statue, and turns out that was a bad thing. And then Wonder Woman showed up and is like, what did you do? So I'm going to be upfront with you here. Last issue, I can't remember how I pronounced the target's name. I think it was Lapetus or Lapetus. Did some research. Turns out no one spells it with an L. It's always Iapetus. Iapetus with an I. I'm going to use that. I will most likely forget again by next issue. So we open up with Deathstroke just kind of recapping exactly what happened, and he comes to blows with Wonder Woman saying, all right, do you know what you just did? And he's like, yeah, I screwed up. And she's like, nah, more than that. Like, what exactly was your plan here? He's like, I was told to come in here and kill a god named Iapetus, and instead I found a statue. And she's like, that wasn't a statue, you idiot. That was the prison. That was his vessel to keep him contained. He is a destructive force that is now roaming about, and Paradise Island is ground zero, and you've just doomed the world. And Deathstroke's like, okay, like I said, I made a mistake. And so the fight continues out into the middle of the jungle, and she just keeps on tearing into him. And Deathstroke's like, okay, I have not been beaten down this hard in a while. She really does pack a punch. And also, she's right. I really did mess this up. So as he goes flying across the horizon, some other Amazonians see him and it's just like, oh, we must warn the others. There's an intruder. So she continues to knock him around, and he's like, hey, look, right now we want the same thing. And she's like, tell me who sent you. And he's like, it doesn't matter, okay? Look, I'm here to kill Iapetus. You want to stop Iapetus? Let's do that. And she's like, you can't kill a god. You're a stupid mortal. And he's like, I can and I will. And he does manage to, like, flip her over and just like, now stay down. And she picks up a damn tree and just chucks it at him. Just like, yeah, all right, you think you can take on a god? Let's see you do it. And as she chucks the tree at him, all of a sudden his sword comes flying around and tries to slash at Diana from the back. She blocks it with her manacles, and she's like, okay, only one person can make a sword like that. Hephaestus, how did you end up getting it? And he's like, well, I think you answered your own question, and, you know, it kind of makes sense now, doesn't it? But either way, yeah, this isn't just a sword. It can be anything I want it to be, and it transforms into a big javelin. And Wonder Woman, once again, is just like, you are playing this way too simply here. The thing you just freed is going to kill you. It's going to kill all of us. And we see this montage that apparently the different parts of Iapetus' body were dismembered and scattered among the island so that he can never be put back together, but we see all these different like animals are being killed and their entrails are being ripped out, which seems to contain his body parts as part of these animals. And Wonder Woman's pissed off not only because obviously Iapetus is free, but also because her people will die, and like that's a big problem for her. And Deathstroke's like, well, blame Hephaestus. He's the one who set me up. I don't even know what's I've like. If you want to take care of Iapetus, I'll go take care of Hephaestus. No big problem. He's like, once again, you can't even handle Hephaestus. You literally are incapable of taking down a god. I need you to be clear on that. And we see that the body is being very slowly assembled once back together. So now the Amazons come in. They're all circled around to watch the fight as Diana's just laying the smackdown on him, managed to knock off his helmet. And before she can do anything too serious, in comes Hessia, who's like, hey, how's it going? Please, don't hurt him. And apparently Hessia and Deathstroke know each other. I feel like I remember that, but it was a long time ago. And then Wonder Woman just seemingly punches his lights out. But when he starts coming to, he realizes he has the lasso of truth on him, and she's already got all the answers that she needs. And he's just like, all right, it turns out you are just an unwitting pawn, but still, you've ruined everything here, and you're a pawn in someone even bigger than Hephaestus's game. So let's see what's going on there. So he snaps out of his little daisies in. Hessia's there like, hey, you look just as young as I remember you from back in the day, but I don't understand why you would have come here, because that's a really bad idea. And he's like, yeah, no, I get that now. Thank you. So at that point, Wonder Woman's like, okay, well, you set foot on the island and you committed like a cardinal crime, so that would mean banishment from the island. He's like, yeah, I wasn't planning on coming back here, so that's no big deal. But still, how about I help you take out Iapetus? And just like, once again, you're immortal. However, you do have Hephaestus' sword, and it does seem powerful. So, fine, I guess you can help, but if you die trying, that's not my fault. So she takes the lasso off him, and he's like, all right, cool, that's awesome. Now give me back my helmet, and I'll start getting on the job. And she's like, okay, if you think you can kill a Titan by yourself, like, you're crazy. I'm helping you out here. And also, you keep on calling me princess and other things throughout here. If you call me anything but Wonder Woman ever again, I'm killing you myself. Like, that's just happening. Got it? So before they can do anything, laughter and lightning strike a mountaintop behind them. And he says, all this talk of bloodshed has made me thirsty. And Deathstroke's like, oh, hey, is this the guy? And it's like, yeah, it's the guy. So up on the mountaintop, we see Iapetus and his dark army is behind him. And he says, I'll drink the blood from every Amazon on Themyscira. So, not a good day. It's an okay issue. Like, the art's really good. I don't want to, like, the fight scene itself is fine for what it is. As a fight scene, it is solid. My problem comes down to, you could sum this up in 3 pages. You could really get all this like, Wonder Woman says, what did you do? He explains that Hephaestus put him up to it. Wonder Woman explains, like, how deadly Iapetus is. And then, for whatever reason, he's like, okay, and now we can fight. Instead, it was stretched out to 20. And, like, again, art-wise, it works. It feels like it's good. But, like, if I was shelling out the $2.99, $3.99 that this book cost, I don't feel like I would have gotten my money's worth. I feel like I would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. But, like, if I were to have skipped the issue and there was just a single page saying, and then Deathstroke and Wonder Woman teamed up, and I go into the next issue, I don't think I would have missed anything. I think it all would have been exactly the same. So it's a little iffy there. I think the art is going to bump it up to a 7 for me, but it's shaky. This is a bit too decompressed for me. I want a little bit more. Either you can do this level of decompression, but it needs to be paired with character development. It needs to be paired with me learning something about these characters and how they react to these things. This was just a fight scene. That's all it was. So 7, but mostly on art. Wonder Woman number 42, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. So last issue we had Wonder Woman finding out about a new villain who was able to fight her a little bit before diving off the end of a bridge, and then it's revealed that this dude's taken orders from some bubbling pot of magic or something that spawns him a Pegasus. This issue picks up at a dance club in London, and Diana is just dancing with Hessia, just enjoying herself, having a good time. And as they are dancing into the night, all of a sudden this dude comes up, dances with, and just like, hey, gorgeous, I Googled sexy and I saw your picture. And she's like, oh, God, get away from me. And he just doesn't take a hint. His friends are egging him on. And he's like, oh, yeah, why don't you shake your booty? And he grabs her ass. And Diana's like, nope. And just flips him over her head and says, the only thing you can do for me is think about it next time before you try to lay your hands on someone without permission. So Diana gets a high five from the bouncer on her way out. And she's like, yeah, all right, that was an eventful way to end the evening. And they pass by this homeless veteran who's just looking for some spare change or whatever. And as Diana bends down and says like, hey, I'm Diana. I can give you a warm place to sleep tonight and some food. How about that? What's your name? And she kneels down next to him. And as she does so, all of a sudden, a bow and arrow, an arrow just like shoots right above her head. And we see the dude from before, who's given the name later on of Aegis. Aegis? I'm going to say Aegis. That sounds more Greek to me. He takes the shot, and Hessia and Wonder Woman see him, and Wonder Woman's like, all right, I'm gonna go get him. You take care of our homeless friend here. So she flies up to the top of the building as Aegis is trying to run away, and she's like, who would want to shoot me? I don't get it. Tackles him down to the ground and says like, what were you thinking? And he's like, oh, I thought it was just as good as our last fight on the bridge. And she's like, you were that boy from before who knew that I was a god? And he's like, yep, and now I'm taking down the god of war. And he throws down some tear gas, and she's like, well, all right, you may have been able to get away from me before, but not so easily this time. And then she looks around trying to figure out where he went. All of a sudden, he comes up on this dark Pegasus and is like, consider yourself lucky, I'm feeling generous. And then all of a sudden, a portal opens up in front of him, and he flies into it. And Wonder Woman's like, what the hell was that? So we cut to several months earlier, where we get Aegis. His mother is sick, dying in bed. He doesn't seem to care much for her, but she's like, look, I regret that I couldn't see this bright future ahead of you. You have the blood of the gods in you. And she basically says, here's the story of Theseus. He was descendant of Poseidon and all that stuff. And they kept having kids. You're of Theseus's bloodline. You directly have some of the gods in you. Your eyes are bright blue because of your link to the sea. And he's like, Mom, I don't believe these stupid stories. I didn't ever before. Like, why would I care? And he's like, oh, well, before your father died, he wanted me to give this to you on your 21st birthday, but I'm going to die before then, so here you go. And he passes over a little coin called a token of the sea, and it's like, oh, this is your destiny, my son. This is my last request. So he goes out to the ocean just like, all right, hello, I'm Aegis. I'm Poseidon. And answer my call. The blood of the gods. This is stupid. I don't even know why I'm doing this. And a voice comes up from below saying like, geez, you really are delusional if you think Poseidon gives a crap about anyone but himself. In fact, you might be exactly what I'm looking for, though. And we cut to current day where he's talking to the big bubbling pot of water, and he's like, Wonder Woman nearly got me killed, okay? She's crazy. Why are you sending me up against that? And it's like, oh, you're being melodramatic. Don't worry about that. And Aegis is just like, it's not fair. I'm descendant of a god. I deserve to have god powers. You make me a god already. And he throws the coin into the bubbling water, and it bubbles up and like turns into a big geyser, and just like, you are an insolent brat, and do not pretend to think that you have any inherent power yourself. Everything you have are things that I gave you because Wonder Woman is not willing to take her place as the god of war. So shut your trap and do what you need, or else I will take it away from you. And specifically, she says something life purpose, but then I might even go so far as to say that it gives the strife. The strife is what gives life purpose. Wink, wink. So we go over to Mount Olympus, and Wonder Woman's like, so bow and arrow, Pegasus, blonde hair, blue eyes, that's ringing any bells? And Hera's like, nah, gods have their secrets. You know that better than anyone. Like, yeah, I have no idea who that is, but we'll keep an eye out. And Zola's like, yeah, no, we'll tell you what's up. So Wonder Woman goes down and talks to Donna, and just like, so Donna, how you feeling? You think about our talk the other day? And she's like, I could still hear the screams of all of the male Themyscirians that I killed, and I have to live with that horror. And she's like, okay, well, Do you think maybe you're choosing to put yourself through that horror? Maybe you can just accept their forgiveness. All the other Amazonians, they forgive you. You don't need to worry about that. And she's like, I don't need forgiveness. I'm a monster. And it's like, look, you have to forgive yourself. That's going to be the hardest part here. If you have the strength to do that, which I believe you do, then we can start moving on. So Wonder Woman leaves her. And as she's just kind of pouting for a moment, Strife, who's like 40 stories tall at this point, just kind of like leans next to the cell and just like, oh my God, I thought you would never end with all that, oh, you gotta forgive yourself crap. I mean, how would someone as perfect as Wonder Woman know anything about being damaged beyond repair? And Donna's like, what? What's happening here? And she's like, oh yeah, no, seriously, like if I was going through what you would want to, I would literally want to kill myself. And Donna's like, well, yeah, but I'm pretty sure I'm immortal. I don't even think I can be killed. And she's like, oh yeah, that's too bad. I mean, I guess you could always go to the fates and have them cut your thread of life. And she's like, what? And she's like, oh yeah, that's right. You don't know anything about Greek mythology. You were literally just made. The fates have your thread of life and they can cut it and you will die. And here's a key to your cell. And the last time I saw the fates was in London. But, you know, whatever you do is up to you. I'm not saying one way or the other. That's whatever. So, good luck. Enjoy your freedom. Everyone deserves a chance to find their own truth. And that's where the issue ends off. It's Strife. It's Strife. I mean, I get it. I understand the motivation of you introduce this new character of Aegis, but you want to root him in something that we already understand. And from the Azzarello run, I don't think there's any character we understand more than Strife. Like, she is very one-note, single-minded, screw this, I'm just going to cause problems. But that is kind of where I'm coming up with issues against it, is that Strife, in any other context outside of like Greek mythology, is essentially just a mustache twirling villain. Is just evil for the sake of being evil. There's no deeper motivation. There's no, here's my wants and needs and why doing bad things will eventually get me there. It's just, I'm bad to the bone and that's how it is, baby. Like, I was okay with that every once in a while in the Azzarello run. Someone to just stir the pot a little bit. Someone to just make things bad. But like, we're out of that now. And I kind of want more. Maybe Strife does have a deeper motivation. I'm not going to say she doesn't. She's saying something about Diana needs to act more like a god of war, but like, she still just feels like Strife to me. And I kind of am bored of that character because there's no deeper interest going on there. Aegis, however, he's a fine enough character. Someone who discovers that he's even a little bit demigod. Yeah, someone who's going to be entitled when he discovers that. Someone who's going to think he's more self-important. I like that as an idea. And Strife is playing on that. Perfectly reasonable. Yeah. I mean, if we're doing more Donna stuff, I'm also okay with that. It's really just the Strife reveal that's pissing me off more than anything. I feel like that's either you save that for a little bit later so I don't have to sit with it this whole arc, or just don't make it Strife. So I'm going to say 7. It just barely cracks that, but a lot of that's on art. And I do like the Aegis stuff. Like, even with Stripe being involved, I like his stuff. So, yeah, 7 I think feels more than fair. Don't really have anything else to say, except I hope that whatever we do moving on from this can be just a little bit more interesting than, ooh, Stripes being naughty again. We are Robin number 2, written by Lee Bermejo, art by Jorge Corona and Rob Haynes, with Khary Randolph doing the epilogue. So, last issue we had Duke looking for his parents, ended up underneath the ground in the Gotham Underground, and he discovered there was a plot to, like, bomb a bunch of buildings. And as he tried to escape from being found out, a group of teenagers calling themselves Robins came in to save the day. So this issue picks up, and it's the middle of the fight scene. The narration boxes going on from Duke here are him basically like writing a letter to his parents or talking to his parents saying like, I know you wanted me to grow up to be like a scientist, and like I wanted to be a paleontologist, and like he goes through all this stuff about like how he liked puzzles and how he was always smart and da-da-da, but that's not really the way things are shaken out as it stands now. So we see the fight is continuing. As I said last issue, a lot of the names for these other Robin kids are not going to stick for a while. That's fine. I'm not holding that against the book, as long as they keep it up. And they do. So we've got Izzy, we've got Troy, we've got Dre, we've got one other one, Rico, and someone else in here as well. But regardless, they're trying to fight off all these homeless people who are attacking them, and they're waiting for Rico to do something, to pull something out of her, quote, magic bag. And Duke's like, hey, I thought you guys were saving me here. Thought you had a plan. Doesn't seem like it. And they're just like, well, you know, a little gratitude here will go well. So eventually, as they're going about it, we see that Dax ends up taking a brick to the side of the head, which pisses off Dre. He runs in to try to help and stop that, and Duke is like, oh god, there's a lot going on there. Eventually he gets his head forced down to the ground, and as he's kind of the target here, the one that they are trying to save, we see that Rico eventually, not Rico, Nico, no, it is Rico, R-I-K-O. Rico pulls out a flare gun, flamethrower, hard to say, and it starts firing it off at the crowd, providing just enough distraction for everyone to escape and take Duke with them. So they get up out of there, but Duke, a little bit out of it after having his head bashed in the ground, is just saying, like, they said they were bombs and gotta, so they get him up onto the street. And before he can come to, they get a text from the Nest that says, leave him and run. And they're like, what? And the cop car's pulling up, and it's just like, okay, we listen to the Nest. So they leave and leave Duke in the street to be collected by this police officer. And when he finally comes to, snaps out of it, he's in an interrogation room. He's got a bandage on his head, and the first words out of his mouth are, I want a lawyer. To which one he's like, oh, it's not necessary, you're not under arrest. And he's like, that's not what it seems to me. Where are the others? And he's like, you're the only one there. The rest of them disappeared. I want to know what happened to you. And he's like, I have nothing to say to you. I don't trust cops. And he's like, all right, well, why are you down in the Sooner tunnels this evening? Were you looking for your parents? Was that what was going on? I know quite a bit about you, Mr. Thomas. And he's like, Mr. Thomas was my dad. So he basically says, look, what are you guys going to do about those bombs? And he's like, oh, I don't know. What are we going to do about them? And he's like, what do you mean we? You're the cops. I don't intend on doing anything about them. And he's like, oh, well, you know, you learned about this information of dangers, and what are you willing to do about it? And he's like, look, I'm not one of those robbing kids. I just came across them. I don't care about that. That's not me. I just want to find my parents. And we see this police officer who's got dark glasses, full mustache and beard thing going on. He's like, what if I made you an offer? Like, if you can help me handle this bomb situation, I'll help you find your parents. And he's like, are you kidding me? I am a kid. Like, I'm not going up against some crazy homeless army that's got a bunch of bombs and stuff like that. Aren't there professionals for that? And he's like, I'm going to make you a professional. And he's like, no. Once again, I don't trust cops. I'm not looking to join the police force. And he's like, all right, no taken, but it's your choice. And just remember, only you know where our first target is. So he closes the interrogation room and leaves. Duke just sits there. We watch the hours tick by, or at least the minutes within the hour, until finally he's like, what kind of cop just leaves a kid in here? What's going on? He goes and tests the door. He finds out it's open. And as he steps out, he sees that he's not in a police precinct. He's in a warehouse. It was an interrogation room built in the middle of this warehouse. And sitting in front of the door is a motorcycle, a jacket with a big R on it, a helmet, and a phone that says, we're meeting on the roof at this street corner. So we see he puts it on and he goes off. And on the street corner, we see all the Robins are sitting, waiting on top of a roof. And just like, man, I'm already staying out past curfew. What am I going to tell my dad? I can't just tell him I was down in the sewer beating up homeless people. Like, he's definitely not going to like that. And they talk about the Nest, and like, we got to listen to the Nest. It's got to be Batman, right? Batman's the Nest. Who else would be bringing together all of these Robins? That's a whole thing. And as they're talking, in steps Duke, and he's like, hey, it's me. And it's like, oh man, I knew this dude was Robin material. He's like, I'm not dude, I'm Duke. And Dre steps up and he's like, well, hold on, how did you even know we were here? And he holds out the phone and shows the Nest text to him. He's like, well, fair enough, that's it. So did you see him? Did you see Batman? And he's like, no, that wasn't Batman. I've met Batman. That wasn't Batman. It's like, yeah, you met Batman. He's like, no, seriously, I met Batman. This dude, he had like a mustache, and then the other person, Troy, comes in and he's like, dark glasses, mustache, beard combo, all that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, that was him. He's like, yeah, that guy recruited me at a football game. Says he was like a college recruiter. And then when I open up a gym bag that he passed me, it had the phone in it. And next thing I know, I'm part of this. And then Dex comes in and he's just like, no. See, I was closing up the garage one night, and then there he was standing at the end of an alley, dark and shadowy. Had to be Batman. But he's like, but you didn't get a good look at him? No, but it had to be Batman, right? Who else was me pulling in Robins? So at that point, Dre is like, okay, look, why are you here? Well, what's the whole point of you being here? He's like, well, whoever that guy was, he asked me what, quote, we were doing about that bomb situation. And he's like, what do you mean bombs? And he's like, the guy's speech, before he realized I was there, they were targeting major landmarks in the city. And we cut around Gotham. We show a bunch of places that dynamite's been laced and all this stuff. And it's like, Ratface, whatever he was doing, he also said something about their king, which means someone's pulling strings from above. We got to find those bombs, and we got to figure out who's really in control here. Who's the one making all this stuff? And then Troy points out, okay, but we have no idea where this is happening right now. And Duke points out, well, hold on. Ratface said that the first target was, and they look across the street and see it's the Hall of Records. They were already set up here. The Nest knew exactly where to put them. So it's like, yeah, all right, that's weird. So Nest says somewhere outside the subway station or somewhere inside the subway station, get to it. So all the Robins jump into action. They start searching for the bombs. And Duke's narration basically says, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for whatever job you wanted me to have, but I'm going into the vigilante business. Hope I live to tell you about it. And our little epilogue here is following that shadowy figure, the one behind the Nest, who says that he has managed to get ingrained in the homeless community. They're very disorganized. It's sloppy and all that. But the homeless are being used essentially as bait, as chum in the water. And he's looking for the shark. And he looks to Ratface and ends up following him around a little bit, uses a bat drone to follow him around. And we see Ratface approaches this huge shadowy figure hidden in the background, and he kneels before him and says, "It is done, my lord, they are ready. The first is ready to fall." So what does that mean? Something. I last issue I liked from just the setup of it, but I definitely feel like I didn't have a grip on the characters. That felt like it was going to be something with time. Even just in reading this issue, I feel like I get a lot more. I feel like this does a great job of constantly using their names in like directly showing who is being talked to so that we know exactly who each person is. Great writing on that front. I think there's only one I really don't know the name of at this point. I could probably figure it out if I went back to issue 1, but I appreciate the writing style in this, making it so that this large cast of characters all being introduced at once is something I can easily attach myself to. Hint, hint, anyone writing Legion of Superheroes. So, yeah, I'm going to say this is I think it's still like a 7 for me. It's good. I'm still just kind of feeling it out, though. I'm not quite sure where this book is going yet. If it is just going to be a thing of a bunch of teenage vigilantes, that's fine. But we did that with The Movement, and that was another book that felt like it never really had a grip on what it was really doing. It had a moral, it had a thing it was going for, but in a narrative sense. We never felt like there was a real goal in mind. I'm hoping this has something a little bit stronger than, and then someone associated with Batman gets them all to be Robins. So, yeah, it's still a 7, but it has a lot of room to improve, and I look forward to seeing it do so. Sinestro number 13, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Brad Walker. So last issue we had a whole bunch of stuff, but mainly a fight between Soranik and Sinestro that ended up with Soranik, against her will, donning the yellow ring. So this issue picks up and Soranik is pissed, to say the least. And he's just like, you turned me into a monster like you. And he's just like, hey, I saved you. You may not realize that yet, but that's what's happened here. And she's like, oh, you don't lie to me. And she blasts him with a big bolt of energy. And he's like, hey, I'm not lying to you. You have a lot to learn if you want to use this energy effectively. And he pulls up her green ring in a yellow bubble and just like, I have spared you from a very grim fate. And then all of a sudden it just pops out of existence, just fizzles away. And she's like, what? What'd you do with my ring? And he's like, I didn't do anything. Look, someone targeted the Green Lanterns. We saw it coming because I got Alyssa Drax on my side, and she saw all the Green Lantern stuff coming. But if you were wearing that ring right when that happened, you'd be gone too. And we basically just get a little preview page for, by the way, Green Lantern Lost Army is happening. Go check that out. So, yeah, at that point, Sorenek's just like, okay, well, what happened to them? They're my friends. Are they dead? And Liz is like, I don't know. I can't tell that much, but I saw it coming. And she's like, okay, well, if you saw it coming, why didn't you stop it from happening? And Sinestro's like, look, of course, I could have stopped it, but let's be honest here. If I were to go and talk to the Green Lanterns and tell them, hey, you all need to take off your wings, do you really think they were going to listen to me? And Sorenek's like, okay, fine. But like, if I'm not a Green Lantern, what the hell am I? So Sinestro brings together the whole Corps and says like, oh, well, you're one of us. You can help us create order out of chaos. We can make the universe a better place. And she's like, all right, what about the Corrigarians? I thought that was the main goal right now. And so she's like, I can do both. Why you gotta make this whole thing? And it's just like, yeah, well, you can't even find who the traitor in your midst is. And he's like, yeah, I know there's a traitor. I understand that. But don't worry. I'm still going to be able to save the planet. And I already know who the traitor is. And we cut just for a panel over to Becca, who, of course, is watching all this happen. So Sinestro goes off and he looks at the planet and he's like, yeah, this planet, it was dead before I showed up here. And then I came here to make a new Corrigar, and it seems like it's already going to end. So, problems. And then Becca comes in and says, hey, Sinestro, look, I saw what you did with your daughter there. I saw what you did with Warworld of taking that over. Is that what I am to you? Do you think that I'm just another weapon that you can wield about and strike fear into people? And Sinestro's like, look, do you really think that's what I am? Do you really think that's what I'll be doing here? Like, you can take care of yourself. And she's like, oh, I'm a new god. I'm not just going to be another symbol for your strength. And he's like, look, my strength has nothing to do with the weapons at my disposal. Oh, why don't you come with me? And as they continue walking, all of a sudden the ground just starts erupting with like this nuclear energy. And she points out like, hey, it seems like your daughter's right. This planet's going to blow up and you're not really doing anything to stop the reactor. It's not a sign of weakness to evacuate your people. And he's like, no, but if I can save the whole planet, that'd be that much better, right? And as he goes off all pompous, she's like, I could kill him so easily. I could just slice him and no one would know. No one would know. So she flies off after him. And he's just like, yeah, my scientists couldn't save the reactor, but... And they say I've waited too long, but it's not. I can easily still save this day. And Becca's just like, the ground's literally exploding. There is nothing you can do at this point. We need to get your people off this planet. So Sorenek's trying to guide some people off, saying like, hey, everyone get together. I'm going to try to find a way off this planet. Like, we got to do something here. And she tries pulling in some other yellow lanterns. And Sinestro causes a big construct saying like, I bet that most of you think that I've waited too long. I haven't. Nobody leaves. Everyone stays put. And it's just like, yeah, okay, great, cool. You're going to get us all killed. So Becca and Sinestro go down into the planet's core, down where the reactor is. It's going like hypercritical, all that stuff. And Sinestro's like, look, I swore to protect my people. And yeah, it would make my job easier protecting the universe if my people weren't around. But I do kind of want to be their savior. So I'll go ahead and do that. And so he summons up Parallax, the entity from inside of him. And he's like, I bound this thing to my soul and it gave me great power, but I can feel it gnawing away at my insides. I'm not going to be able to keep it forever. So I'm going to use it to save this planet. And he goes and he demands the beast goes and binds it to New Corrigar to use the power of fear to stabilize the reactor. And that's it. Planet saved. And Sinestro kind of like falters for a moment. Becca's like, hey, Sinestro, you. And he's like, look, there you go. That's my true strength. And now you're the only person who knows that I no longer have Parallax inside of me. Use that as you will or will not. So Sorenek and everyone else looks around like, oh my God, he actually did it. What the hell? How did he do that? And Sorenek kind of looks down at the ring and saying like, look, no matter what he does, no matter how he says it, he's just toying with us. This is all just a big chess game to him. And the moment that the game is not going to go in his favor with us as the pieces, he's going to flip the damn board. So we cut back up to Warworld, where Sinestro is getting ready for bed, and Lyssa Drax come up and says, hey, Sinestro, So now you know that I arranged the meltdown. And he's like, what do you mean now I know? I always knew that. You were always betraying me. I know why you plot against me. You keep plotting against me as much as you want, but I swear to God, if you ever insult me by pretending like I don't know your plans, shut up. Just shut up. And he makes the point of saying, like, I know that you are basically trying to test me. You're trying to strengthen me up to be more than I am by getting rid of the Korrigarians, something that could be perceived as a weakness. I appreciate your reasoning, but other people are going to have to take the blame for your actions. And he stands out on the balcony as there are 3 other yellow lanterns all up on the gallows, and he's just like, these 3 lanterns tried to stabilize the reactor and go against my orders, tried to kill us all, and I bet a lot of you think that I'm not fit to lead, that I am weak. Well, check this out. And all the lanterns are like, oh, we swear we only had a little bit of thoughts of you not being strong enough, but we never did nothing to no reactor. And Sinestro just burns them all alive. And he's just like, I hope that I've made my case clear here, that coups will not be tolerated. So, Sinestro Corps, now is our time. Green Lanterns are gone. We're going to take over all their sectors. We're going to do the Green Lantern's job now. That's what we're doing. You all have your assignments. Get out there. And all the Sinestro Corps flies off to take over the Green Lantern sectors. And he turns and tells Alyssa, like, all right, go off, do whatever it is you're going to do, and get ready for the day that someone's going to try to steal this all away. And Alyssa's like, wait, hold on. You're letting me live? But you know I'm just going to keep betraying you. You know that I'm going to keep deceiving you again. And he's like, yeah, I know I can't trust you, but your dedication, your love for me, I can use that. And he pulls her in for a big kiss and says, you're still useful to me. So that's messed up, but I like it. I think that it's a solid end piece there. It makes sense as to why Alyssa would try to blow up New Korrigar, let the New Korrigarians die, and give Sinestro an easy out for letting that happen. But then Sinestro's just like, no, screw you. You tell me I have to choose between A and B. I'm choosing C because I'm goddamn Sinestro. And then, yeah, Soranik and her new role as a Yellow Lantern and having to deal with that. It's going to be interesting. The fact that the rest of the Corps is now out doing the Green Lantern's jobs, that's going to be a cool story point. Honestly, as much as this book does kind of feel beholden to whatever is going on in the rest of the Green Lantern universe, in the first few issues, this is... now it's just plotting its own way, and it's letting it do whatever it wants. So curious to see where it's going to turn out, curious to see where it's going to go. I'm going to say this one is a solid 8. I think there's enough forward progression here and enough characterization that it really does work for me. So very good. Keep it up. Aquaman number 42, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Trevor McCarthy. So last issue we had the whole big setup for this arc, which is that there is some other universe, dimension, something bleeding over, possibly poisoning Atlantis. And then we're cutting between past and present, and in the present, Aquaman is trying to defend that other dimension as it's coming in, much to the chagrin of Mera, who's in charge of Atlantis. So this issue basically picks up in the same place. We have Aquaman talking about how when he was young, a friend of his tried to convince him to get into Magic the Gathering, to which he declined. And then he's like, yeah, I probably could have used it a little bit more because I don't know nothing about magic. And so we see that he's in some sort of place, I genuinely could not tell you where a bunch of people are in cages, and he's like, oh, I have to free these people. You're supposed to be a powerful wizard. Why don't you help me? And we cut over to this mix between Swamp Thing and a fish who's like, oh, using matter takes great concentration, which I'm currently using on you to keep you from poisoning this place. And so he swipes the cages, lets the people out and free after he beats back everybody else. And that's that. We cut back to the past, where Mera is basically saying, this is a bad idea. They're not going to accept me as ruler of Atlantis. And Aquaman says, yeah, they are. Check this out. Hey, loyal guards, will you accept her? And they go, yeah, totally. And it's like, see? And she's like, they're loyal to you. Of course they're going to say that. They're not representative of the nation as a whole. And he's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're going to be a better queen than I was a king. And when I get back, like, everything will be fine. So they kiss, they have a moment. Back to the present, we see that they come through a portal into the Amazon, Aquaman and the people he freed. The people are reunited with family and such like that. We see the Swamp Thing looking thing is called Extriax, and he's talking to Aquaman saying, hey, you're still upset about something. Like, you just reunited these people. Isn't that great? And he's like, you know that isn't enough. Like, I had to give up my kingship and all that sort of stuff. And he basically spells out the whole arc here, which is he decided that he doesn't want to doesn't want to hurt innocent people, but in doing so, he's dooming his own kingdom. And so at a certain point, he's going to be forced to destroy the other world that's coming through. And that place is called Thule by Extriax, but it went by another name, but we don't know what the other name is quite yet. We then see Aquaman go out. He's ready to destroy the encroaching temple of Thule, and he's like, wait a minute, hold on, I sense some life inside. And so he starts flying in, and the poison kind of just moves around him, and the people he's with are just like, is he controlling the poison? What's going on with that? So as he makes his way deeper into the temple, all of a sudden an air pocket forms around him, and Aquaman's like, what? Who's doing that? And we see a bunch of people in the temple are like, oh, hey, look, he breathes air just like we do. Hi, how's it going? We are Atlanteans, but we're an offshoot that didn't do the whole breathing underwater thing. And if you're the king of Atlantis, then we are your subjects. And he's like, what? And then Extriax is like, yeah, no, we're here to plead for sanctuary. We need your help, Aquaman. So we cut to a city in Alaska, present time. Apparently there's been little things, and I think they said this last issue, where it's the alternate dimension is dipping its toes in. It's just getting a feel for things before it jumps in headlong. So there's been little trinkets and stuff that have shown up, like they show a artifact of Cthulhu's head, the big squid monster, but then wouldn't you know it, everything goes wrong at once. So we see that the temples start sprouting up out of the water off this coastal city, and all the people are watching on in horror, and then Aquaman comes in and says, nope, not on my watch. So he starts fighting back all the temples, and in doing so, he's like, all right, at the very least, these satellites that keep coming in, there's something that I can punch. That's the least I can do here. But as he's doing so, he gets stopped by a hit squad that was formed by Mera to take him in and or kill him. And we see he recognizes most of the people: King Shark, Scylla, Chitak, and Charybdis. Just think Suicide Squad, but like for Atlantis. However, they're being led by a young boy who looks very fairly human/Atlantean, but he does not recognize, at least Aquaman doesn't. And he's the one who seems to be leading this. He's like, oh, come on, don't make this any worse than it already is. And he's like, look, as you can see, I'm kind of dealing with a thing back here. If you help me with that, we can negotiate surrender. And then, I don't know, Charybdis or whatever jumps in, just like, nah, screw that. We're going to kill you anyway, even if we said that we were going to let you live. And he's like, well, all right, that settles that. So Aquaman starts beating up this hit squad, doing everything he can. And finally, the young man steps in, and he's like, look, you say you're trying to stop the infection, but look at you. Look what you're fighting against us. Your actions betray you. And he's like, yeah, I've been betrayed, all right, but it's by my wife, and I'm betting she's the one who sent you. Not actually a wife, girlfriend, you know what I mean. So he feels bad for the kid. Obviously, he's been propagandized by Mera, whatever is going on here, and she's convinced him that Aquaman is causing the apocalypse for Atlanteans. But then he's like, look, there's an enemy out there, but it's not me. Why can't anyone see that? And we see elsewhere in the town a giant mech made out of this satellite stuff is marching its way through the city and causing some mayhem. So yeah, that's the issue. All right, to be clear, the young guy who Aquaman doesn't recognize, I think it's Garth. I'm not that brushed up on old Aquaman stuff, but it's Aqualad. It's clearly who we're going for here. Okay, sure, I'm not opposed to it. I guess my issue with this is that we're doing this back and forth story. We're doing this thing where it's okay, we're dealing a bit in the past and we're showing how it got to the point where Aquaman did have to quote unquote betray Atlantis and protect this Thule group. But in the present, we're already there, and we kind of get the gist of how it happened. I feel like we're stretching out the past storyline a bit too long. The only thing that I'm curious about in the past storyline now is, how did Mera come to hate him so much? Like, you've made it clear, he's doing this to protect these people because they are innocent. And I feel like I got that from the last issue as well. So the only thing that's curious is, why is Mera so against him? You don't need to do the rest of the stuff. Just get to that point and tell the story in present day, because otherwise it feels like every time we cut to the past, you're just wasting page space. Beyond that, I mean, present day story is not all that interesting for me either. We haven't done anything yet that has got me to the point where I'm like, okay, here is his actual definitive endpoint goal. He just has this vague thing of, I'm going to keep fighting till I can't fight no more, and that's possibly intriguing, but it doesn't feel like we're moving towards anything, either in the past or the present storyline. So we're kind of stuck at this point where it's, oh, we're just going to keep doing this every issue until we run out of steam. Yeah, I think overall this one's probably flagging down at like a 6.5 for me. It's just not grabbing me. I want to like it. I want to be able to take this path, but like, it's not doing anything that is really interesting for me quite yet. It has the potential, it's just not there. Harley Quinn Power Girl number 2, written by Amanda Connor, Jimmy Palmiotti, and Justin Gray, art by Stefan Roux and Elliot Fernandez. There we go. So the last issue was basically just some major setup of Power Girl and Harley are in this alternate world where free love's a whole thing, but the leader of the free love planet named Vardox is taken hostage by this other guy who's a prude named Oreth Odiox, and now they're attacking the planet because Power Girl and Harley are too sexy. So Power Girl tells Harley, hey, you get those people out of here, I'm going to buy you some time against these drones. And don't blow stuff up. It's very important that you don't do that. So one of the guys leads Harley over to a love lair, which he says has plenty of refreshments and stuff like that. And he's just like, look, if you save us, you can have anything you want. She's like, oh, but I want a lot. So Power Girl's fighting against a bunch of the drones. They keep on piling in. And she's like, all right, something's got to be able to stop them. And she sees a giant portal, green hole in space. Like, oh, well, got to shut the big space hole. So down in the love lair, we see Harley and the rest of their group comes across this killbot who is named Killy McHappybot 2.0. And just like, all right, well, give us a minute. And Harley goes and talks to the rest of the crew, just like, I need some weapons from you guys if I'm going to fight this thing. And they're like, we don't have weapons. We're a free love society. Why would we have weapons? And she's like, okay, well, what about like a museum that has a special exhibit on weapons of the ancient past or something like that? And it's like, we don't have any of that stuff. That's not, what are you talking about? And the killbot's like, hey, by the way, I have extra good hearing as well, and I can hear all of your plans and stuff. So I am about to, let me see if I remember this exact line here. Sew your orifices shut. So, you know, that's a thing. Power Girl's out in space. She's fighting against a bunch of these drones in the space portal and all that. And they just, like, I cannot overstate the number of lines in here that are like, for instance, it's like that portal has bad guy diarrhea. And as she's getting hit, she says, must cork that cosmic crack. So yeah, she, you know, there's a bunch of people blasting her from the ground. She ends up flying down real quick and causing like a big explosion, knocking them all aside. And she's like, all right, now that I can finally focus. And then all of a sudden she gets hit by something else. So Harley and the rest of the people are trying to outrun the Killbot. Killbot pulls out a big sword blade thing, ends up slashing one who's wearing a red shirt, to which Harley points out, yeah, probably shouldn't have worn that color shirt. And they eventually make their way into a museum exhibit, which is a sculpture studio that is, all the sculptures are made out of hard light constructs. And so they're like, oh, this is exactly what I need. And so she puts on a pair of gloves that are used to mold these hard light constructs, get them built out in the holograms. And as the Killbot arrives in, Harley crafts herself a hard light mallet with a big peace symbol on it. And she starts mashing the robot, like absolutely pounding it off panel. Then she makes a smaller mallet and a chisel and starts putting on some finishing touches. And when she's all done, the Killbot has turned into a giant robot bunny. And the robot's still fully sentient. It's like, I feel like my previous form has gone largely unappreciated to the masses. I actually much prefer this new form. And like all the free love people coming in like, oh yeah, no, this is great. This is awesome. The universe really approves of this form and whatnot. And as the robot's like, yeah, you know what? I need to express. Wait, what are you doing? And Harley just punches it as hard as she can, completely destroys it. And she's like, and that's how I show my art. So we go back to Power Girl. She's been knocked out by the whatever. And a couple of the people working for Odious whatever is pulling her out of the hole, saying like, yes, she must be the mate of the repulsive Vartox. And then as they're pulling her out, all of a sudden they get blasted by some energy, and in comes a new group of heroes. Cherub, Warfare, Envoy, Salamandar, Firefox, and Carnal. I will never remember any of those names, but they are the XGF, to which Cherub, who's a dude, has a problem with that. And as they fight off and all these other people long enough for Power Girl to wake up, she's like, wait, who are you guys? And they're like, we're the XGF. And it turns out that this is a squad of the ex-girlfriends/lovers, because Cherub was apparently a one-night stand, of Vartox, who are now sent to protect Power Girl, who is his new main squeeze. And so, yeah, that's just the thing that's happening here. So at that point, Harley comes in riding on a hard light motorcycle, and she's like, hey, I'm here to save you. And she starts knocking away all the XGF, and Power Girl's like, wait, hold on, they're good. And it's like, what? I've been gone for 2 minutes. How are they friends? So she introduces them as the ex-girlfriend force, and Cherub's upset about that, and Harley's like, all right, so should I even ask? And like, nah, not gonna matter. So they say, all right, well, where's Vartox? And Harley's like, oh, we know where. He's on a lust moon, and I just got us a ride with this hard light motorcycle. And they're like, okay, we have our own ship then, so no need to worry about that. And we cut over to the lust moon of Lustox, whatever. And Oderon, whatever his name is doing the Clockwork Orange thing of the brainwashing of Valerian. What's his name? Vartox. God, there's so many names being thrown around in this book. He's doing a brainwashing, and he's like, I will never surrender. And he's like, oh, yeah, you will. And then he just does. And he says, yeah, his eyes are glowing, and he has black text boxes now saying, what is it you will have me do, master? So, yeah. Look, this is the same as the other Harley Quinn book. And I hate to harp on this. I really do. I want to enjoy these books. I want to go into it and say, like, that was a real fun time. And the humor really landed. And the art really was saying something to me. Like, it's a house style. And it's juvenile humor at best. Like, it doesn't even feel like it's being witty about anything. Like, when they reference the red shirt thing, it doesn't feel like they're making a point. It makes, like, it's a pop culture thing. It's just them saying, like, by the way, red shirts, am I right? And it's like, yeah, I guess. Did you spend an evening on TV tropes? I don't know what we're doing here. I'm sounding a lot more negative than I really feel about this book, but it's just kind of Harley as a brand. I feel like they could be doing much more with it, making her a much more defined character, but instead it's just boob jokes nonstop. So yeah. 6. I'm just not into this. Maybe it's for somebody, but for me, it just feels like this was absolutely born of, we need another Harley book. How do we justify it? Teen Titans number 10, written by Will Pfeiffer, art by Felipe Watanabe. So, last issue, things ended with Wonder Girl and her team breaking into the place where Teen Titans are hanging out along with Khan. And they don't want to fight, but they really want to fight. So we pick up in the penthouse of this building that they specifically point out in the narration you can't possibly afford. And there's a standoff between the two sides. And Wonder Girl's like, look, no one has to get hurt. We don't want this to degenerate into meaningless violence. And then Kid Flash steps up and says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on a second, Wonder Girl. And he like runs around the room real quick and says, Robin, remember at the end of the previous Teen Titans series where me and Solstice were left in the future in a prison and you just left us there? How dare you, sir? And Robin's like, bro, you asked us to leave you there. And is that really, like, do you really want to discuss that now? And he's like, well, maybe I did ask you to leave me there, but I've had many centuries to think on it. And then Robin just throws down a little, like, flash bomb, tells Beast Boy to turn into a hippo, and then they just pin down Kid Flash to the ground. And then they're just like, anyway, ignoring that stupid crap, let's continue our conversation. So basically Cassie comes over to Connell and just like, look, let's go before there's any more trouble. And he's like, Cassie, don't put your hands on me. And he pushes her into the TV and it immediately turns into a fight. So this is all basically the Star Labs team going up against Connell. We see Guardian come up and Superboy just punches him outside the building, no problems. Clarion and Trinity, who we didn't even talk about Trinity ever before. She is a Indigo Tribe Lantern, and she comes up and she is apparently able to make 3 copies of herself. And Clarion's like, she might be easy to beat if you weren't having reality warp around you. And I guess he's just kind of like making a little bit of vertigo in his head. And he's like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to keep punching these constructs. So Guardian comes back and says like, oh, we should have kept you contained at Star Labs, and starts throwing punches. As the fight's going on, Robin turns to Raven and says like, hey, we're not really a part of this book right now. Can you, on my mark, teleport us over to wherever the hell Manchester Black is? And she's like, yeah, I could do that. And then all of a sudden, Superboy's winding up a punch to punch Guardian's shield, and Robin's like, okay, now. And as soon as he hits, there's a big explosion, and Robin and Raven teleport out in the chaos. So Superboy looks around, sees the whole team is down except for Power Girl, and says like, all right, well, I don't want to kill anybody, but I can't guarantee that if you're going to keep fighting, so I'm out. And he just jumps out the window, tries to fly away. Power Girl's like, you hurt my team, you don't get to leave. And so she jumps out, grabs hold of Connell, and he's like, wow, all right, you got quite a grip on you there, but you haven't had your powers for very long, have you? And she's like, nope, that's why I still use actual wrestling moves, like a headlock. And she's like, that's very nice. I can do much more than you, though. And he just like flips her over her head and throws her down to the ground. Looks like she's about to land in a swimming pool, but misses it by like 3 feet. And she's like, yeah, that would have been nice to land in the pool. So Cassie comes down and says, you cool? And she's like, I'm fine, I'll get back at him. And she's like, no, let me handle him. And she takes off as fast as possible, leaving Power Girl there to be like, all these people on the rooftop, can anyone direct me to the building I just came from? And they just pull out pictures and start snapping shots of her. So all of a sudden, Khan hears a sonic boom behind him, says like, wow, I didn't think Power Girl could fly. And Wonder Girl just slams him into the building and says she can't. So their fight's continuing. As rubble's about to fall down onto the people down below, Clarion turns it into snow and just like, yeah, I'm just doing my thing here as a sorcerer or whatever. Oh, crap. Where's Robin and Raven? They bailed. They're back in New York. Crap. So we cut over to Manchester Black, who is inside the World Trade Center, and once again, a text box that says that you can't afford to live here either. And Manchester Black standing there like, I spent a fortune on putting you kids together. Bring me Superboy. And they try to warn him that Red Robin and Raven have teleported over to him, but it's too late. They're already in the room. So we go back to Cassie and Khan, who are up in the sky of Chicago, and just like, look, someone's going to get killed if we keep this up. And Connell's like, I know, let's end it. And he just grabs her, tackles her down, starts zooming down to the water at like Mach speed. And when I say water, I mean actually a bridge to which they go through, and Connell just kind of holds her underwater for a while, and he apparently doesn't need to breathe. She apparently does. So she blacks out, And at that point, Kid Flash and Chimera, who's mimicking Kid Flash's powers, both show up on the bridge and be like, oh my god, what was that? That's crazy. And Wonder Girl just gets tossed up onto the surface of the bridge. She's unconscious, but she is still alive. And Superboy has taken off somewhere at Mach speed. There's no way they're going to be able to catch up. And Clarion's like, yeah, I don't have a lock on him. And we got to deal with the fact that Robin and Raven are currently at Manchester Black's apartment. And they say, okay, Clarion, teleport us there. And he's like, no, I can't do that. Once again, I am unable to teleport that far, but Star Labs has teleportation technology, so let's get pinged in on that. And as they're getting ready to do that, in come Beast Boy and Bunker, and they're like, we got to stop them. Quick, Bunker. Wrap them up in bricks. But it's too late. They manage to escape, and they have no way to get to New York quickly now. So over in New York, Manchester Black's punching Red Robin in the face, saying, ha-ha, you think you're the only one who's trained. I'm not just a bureaucrat picking up a paycheck here. So turns out this was Red Robin's plan. He was just letting Raven sneak up behind Manchester. She gets the telepath powers on, reads his mind, and she's like, oh my god. And he's like, yeah, that's right. You see what I want you to see now. And he explains exactly what I showed her was where Superboy's salvation lies. And it's all these villains and all this death and stuff like that. And Raven's like, is it hell? Is it hell where Superboy lies? And he's like, no, it's not hell. It's a Supermax prison. And if you want to save your friend, that's where you're going to have to go. Assuming you beat my team once again. And now the team has showed up on his balcony and they're like, what? Can you unlock the door? Can you let us in? So yeah, that's the book. There's a panel in the beginning where Cassie literally says, let's not let this all degenerate into pointless violence. And then the issue is just pointless violence. And especially, I really need to call out that 2 pages of Kid Flash going, hey, Red Robin, I got a bone to pick with you. And he goes, what in the hell are you talking about? We literally ended our book on good terms there. Like, you said you wanted to serve your time. And he's like, yeah, but I changed my mind. It's like, well, you're a teen, I'll give you that. Like, that's the most teenage thing any of these characters have actually done. So yeah, it's not great. I hesitate to say that the writing itself is awful. The narration boxes definitely are. I don't know why we're dealing with that. It just, I know Will Pfeiffer is his own writer. I know he's doing his own things, but every once in a while, I can't help but feel like Will Pfeiffer is just Scott Lobdell in sunglasses and a baseball cap, you know? Like, it's just this ever so minuscule disguise that is immediately falling apart as soon as you look at, like, how these things are written. It's not nearly trying to be as funny as he is, though, and I use trying very specifically there. I'm going to say that this one is a 6.5 for me. At the very least, it looked nice, and I did really like the sequence of Connell tackling Cassie down through the bridge into the water. It's pretty much silent. You feel just like the resignation in Superboy's voice and the panic in Cassie's voice as she realizes what's happening. So kudos to that section, but the rest of it's just kind of like, yeah, they're fighting. That's all this issue is. Why do we need this? So 6.5. Justice League 3001, number 2, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Howard Porter. So, last issue, we got a whole thing about how there was a Starro invasion of a planet, but like they did it legally through bureaucratic means, and then Guy Gardner, who's now a woman, says, screw that, we want to punch him anyway. And then Supergirl was teased at the end, saying that she's going to show up soon. So we open up on a talk show, just your standard Saturday morning, like, oh, here's this morning, and we're sitting down with Ariel Masters, leader of the Justice League. And Ariel's looking upset because, of course, at this point, she's mind controlled by an evil Lois Lane, or rather, she is an evil Lois Lane. And the talk show host is like, so tell us about how awesome the Justice League is. And Ariel's like, they suck. Every last one of them sucks. I hate all of them. They're so awful at everything they do, and they're just the worst. And she's like, haha, just kidding, though, because Ariel Masters cracks jokes. Haha, anyway, we're done now. And so she walks off after just like 2 minutes of an interview, which leaves the talk show host super pissed off. As we see, Ariel comes back through a portal. she talks to Ronald, the robot, and Ronald's like, it didn't seem to go well. And she's like, nah, I went in there and I was fully prepared to pretend to be Ariel, but the way that she was just doting on the Justice League just pissed me off so much. I couldn't stand it. Like, God, I hate them so much. And you know what? Enough dicking around. It's time for Clark Kent and all of his superpowered playmates to pay the price. So we cut back over to the Starro planet, and the whole Justice League is now throwing punches because they made it clear that they were about to try to take back this planet from the Starros. And Superman and Flash are making the point of like, yeah, we can't hurt anybody on this planet because they're all just being controlled by Starros, so we just have to stop them without killing them. And Batman points out, like, wait, hold on, when we arrived on this planet, they didn't want to fight us. Why now? And Guy's like, I don't know. Maybe somebody found out that they did this illegally, or maybe they did it illegally and then had the paperwork pulled. Who knows how it happened? And we see one of the Starros comes up and starts talking to Batman like, hey, look, we did this properly. Why are you guys doing this? And Batman's like, well, are you cool with just talking? It's like, yeah, I'm sent as an envoy. We want to talk this out. We want to have an actual talk here. We want this to go diplomatically. So at that point, the one Starro says, it has come to our attention that you're hunting down our primary form in order to take it out. And Batman's like, what? We didn't even know that was a thing. And he's like, yeah, you did. We heard it from your leader, Ariel Masters. She shared that information with us. And Batman's like, why would she do that? And at that point, the Starro creature just hits Batman like, we are not going to be threatened. So at that point, Flash and Superman get to talking, and Superman's actually like flirting with Flash, and Flash seems to be like flirting back. She's like, oh, hey. He's like, oh, Terry, you're really getting this Flash business down. She's like, you really think so? Thanks, Clarky. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. Did you just call me Clarky? I'm kind of digging it. So at that point, they say, hey, Flash, go off, try to find the primary body, because apparently that'll work. So just search around the whole place. And so she goes in and out of every room, and she's like, well, maybe it's not on the planet. Maybe it's somewhere else. And she looks up in the sky and sees a rocket like coming down to land on the planet. And she's like, that would make sense. They're sending in the primary body now as the fight's going on to deal with us. I'm going to go there and take care of it myself. I might get myself killed, but, we'll see how that goes. So we cut over to Superman and Batman. Batman's like, you let her go on her own? She's going to get herself killed. And Superman's like, hey, no, she's doing fine. She's doing all right. And Batman's like, seriously? And he's like, no, I've made a mistake. That's all on me. And then Guy Gardner comes up and says, hey, you're too blinded by your crush on her to see that she's a strong, independent woman, just like me. And Guy's like, wait, hold on. No, that's not right. One of them's like, no, you had it right. And it's good that you're leaning into your feminine side. And he's just like, I don't. So we cut over to a couple of Starros who are watching the fight, and they're just like, man, we filed the right paperwork. Why are they so upset about this? I really don't get this. And then they talk about the master consciousness of Starro and whatnot, but it's literally just padding. I cannot talk about that at all. So we then see Flash go over to the rocket, and they're like, well, that hit the surface of the planet pretty hard. I don't know if that rocket's going to be good for anybody inside, but we'll crack it open. And then a couple other stars come up and say, hey, step away. And it's like, because this is your primary body, right? And it's like, no, we don't know what that is, but it's our planet, so we call dibs. And then the doors to the rocket open up, and out comes Supergirl. And Supergirl comes out screaming, it's coming, I've seen it, we have to prepare ourselves before, wait a minute, where's Superman? And Flash is like, wait a minute, hold on, you know Clarky? And he's like, Clarky? What the hell's a Clarky? So immediately Supergirl's like, look, I don't know who you are. And she's like, well, I'm Supergirl. He's like, no, Supergirl's a myth. Like the super dog and the super horse and the super monkey. Like, none of those things actually existed. And she's like, don't you talk about the super pets that way. Also, yes, I am. This ship said that it would lock onto Superman's biological matrix. And then the Starros try to get involved. And Supergirl's like, we're having a conversation. She just punts them over the edge of a cliff. And she's like, yeah, look, I'm Supergirl. Tell me what's going on. So Flash gives her the shortened version of saying it's been 1,000 years, to which Supergirl's like, how is that possible? The hyperspeed on my ship was messed up. Maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe. And then the stars are like, hey, no, seriously, you got to come with us. The master consciousness assumes it. And Flash is like, yeah, these are Starros. And Supergirl's like, Starro was always a joke, though. What's Starro still doing around in the 31st century? It's like, no, it's different than you remember, but still pretty much doing the same thing. It's like, okay, well, we can definitely take out Starro. And the Starro people are like, there are billions of us. You will surrender now or we will absorb you into the hive mind. And mention something about how Supergirl is a pure genetic template as opposed to all the Justice League, which are damaged. And Supergirl's like, what does that mean? She's like, longer story. I'll tell you later. So Supergirl's like, all right, I'm just going to go find Starro Prime. I'll be right back. So she flies off with her X-ray vision. She takes all of about 2 panels of Flash just talking to the Starro people and just like, she'll never find them. And then she comes down holding Starro, saying like, hey, I found Starro and he's willing to negotiate a truce. So all the other Starros stop attacking the Justice League, and they're like, wow, Terry must have actually done it. That's fantastic. And as we cut to a final page of one of the Starro people calling up Ariel, and Ariel's like, what do you mean they're still alive? And just like, they found Starro Prime, and they're negotiating a truce, and like it all seems to be going well. And it's like, is there any chance for the peace talks to break down? It's like, well, if it were your Justice League making them, I would say yes. We could probably egg them on, but Supergirl's making the talks. And she's like, since when the hell has there been a Supergirl? Okay, whatever. I'll call you back. So she hangs up. Robot comes in and says, hey, Batman's on the phone. He wants to talk to you. And just like, tell him I'm in a meeting with a bottle of scotch. And that's the issue. I guess I'm just trying to put my thoughts and feelings about Supergirl being here into words. So obviously we had Fire and Ice, who are from that previous period. We had Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, who are also from that period. I don't feel like we need more, you know? I mean, maybe there's something more that we can do with Supergirl here that like Ice and Fire wouldn't have been good enough to deal with, but like, I don't know. I can't think of a good reason as to include her as a character here. Again, I'm sure the writers have something in mind, but like, it feels like there's too much going on now. Like the fact that we introduced Guy Gardner now as a girl, the fact that Ariel has been taken over by an evil Lois Lane, this whole thing with Superman and Flash going on, that's enough. Like, you've got plenty to work with here. You can just run this as far as you would want. Introducing Supergirl just kind of feels like we're going a bit too far with all of the different stuff going on. So it's not that I'm against it. It's not that I think it's a bad idea. I just don't see how it's going to turn out as a good idea. So, I mean, the issue itself is okay. It definitely didn't feel like it needed to be 2 issues, though. That kind of got stretched out into this whole extra thing. So, I'll say 6.5. That's kind of where I'm feeling about it. I don't know. This book is never the worst thing I'm reading, but it's never getting into the process where I'm happy to have read this book. It's just kind of a padding out the week sort of book. And that's it. That's all the comics put out by DC Comics this July 22nd, 2015. And I completely forgot to mention in the opening of the episode, not that I think any of you care except for me, but next week's a 5th week. Woo! Hooray! Now, for anyone who is new to this show, who doesn't know why 5th weeks are special, 5th weeks means that DC does not put out a full 13-ish comics. They instead put out a smaller roster and make a bunch of them annuals, which is great for me personally this week, because next week, I've actually got like family stuff all weekend long. I'm going to have no time to get anything else done. So it's nice that they trim that down just for me. I'm taking it personally. I don't think this impacted anybody else except for me 10 years after the fact. So why don't I tell you what's coming out? Next week we have, in terms of normal issues, Batgirl and Superman. Those are both issues number 42. And then in terms of annual, we have Batgirl, Deathstroke, The Flash, Gotham by Midnight, and Lobo. So that's all coming out next week. In terms of Batgirl, I don't know which comes first, the annual or the regular issue. I will have it in the correct order, if it matters at all, in the episode itself, so don't you worry your pretty little face about that. Beyond that, don't really have anything else to say, except for, once again, check out the previous episode of Comics from the Multiverse, episode 466, because I have no problem pimping out things when I'm involved. It's really easy to do as long as I have something to gain from it. Speaking of which, if you have any comments on any of the comics I've talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit us up in the comment section down beneath this YouTube video if that's how you're watching. If you're listening to the audio version, however, you can check the show notes to find a Discord and a subreddit and a Patreon, because all of those places are places that I occasionally check to see if people are talking about me. I'm very insecure like that. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much once again for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to interact with it in a nice, happy way. A way that makes me feel good and gooey and warm inside, like a freshly baked chocolate chip cookie, or... I can't think of anything else that would fit that description except for a chocolate chip cookie and then things that are, like, disgusting. So I'm going to stick with the chocolate chip cookie aspect. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.